That's right, another day, and we are back for another day of live hitting at the NovaCare Complex as the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast, fueled by Gatorade, continues. I'm Fran Duffy, and I think we've got a great show for you here on episode number 193. At the top of this week's show, we've got Chalk Talk, where I am joined once again by Ben Fennell and Chris McPherson, CMAC in the house. We're talking about practice here Saturday morning at NovaCare. Let's break it down now in Chalk Talk.
Let's get down to business. It's time for Chalk Talk.
All right, well, let's get things going here. CMAC, I'm going to go to you first. Ball's in your court. Big takeaway coming away from practice today.
Very physical practice, 2 live hitting periods. Yep. It was great to see out there. I thought it was great the fact that the weather was more conducive. You had cloud cover for most of the day, so it wasn't as hot and steamy. So I think the players were able to focus a little more, not having to worry about the weather as much. But if you're going big picture takeaway, the diversity of the run game will be the first thing that comes out for me. We had a goal line drill today where Jordan Howard goes in with the first team unit and easily gets into the end zone on his first. And I think he was stopped on one occasion on the reps that he took a part of, but time after time again, he got in the end zone. And Jordan Howard has been a tremendous short yardage and goal line back in his first couple seasons, first 3 years in the league. And that's an area where the Eagles struggled mightily last season. A good day for Josh Adams. We haven't talked a lot about him, but had a couple of plays where he broke off some big runs, where he made some nice cuts and left defenders in their wake. It was great to see that the guy who was the leading rusher for this team a year ago, showing a little bit of juice out there on the field. I know he's battled injuries. He had a shoulder injury, I think it was, in the offseason that limited him. So it's great to see him healthy and 100% and out there balling. Miles Sanders did participate in practice, didn't do the team sessions, but did the important things. A couple of reps where I saw him, it was the running backs and tight ends going against the linebackers.
Yeah, I watched this drill,
and absolutely toasted Kamu Grugier-Hill on an out and up route down the field and made a beautiful catch down the field. Also was fielding balls in kickoff return drills. So anyone who was concerned whatsoever about his injury, nothing to worry about whatsoever. So I would say the depth and talent that the Eagles have at the running back position is what stood out to me on this Saturday.
Yeah, I think when everybody always asks, it was family day here at practice, so there's people all over the sidelines.
We saw little Francis.
We did.
FD4 was in the house
first
today.
Appearance to the practice field. But people say, "Oh, how have the running backs looked so far? How has Jordan Howard looked? How has Miles Sanders looked?" It's tough when they're not tackling to the ground. And even in the first live action the other day, I didn't really come away thinking all right, I got a really good sense, good or bad, of the backs. Today, I agree with you. You were able to see those guys run through some contact, make people miss. When they're trying to get you to the ground. I thought Wendell Smallwood finished some runs well. I agree. Boston Scott had a couple of really good ones. Jordan Howard, broke some tackles, was able to break through on the goal line a couple times. So it was good being able to see those guys in action. Of note, you did mention that one rep in the one-on-one drills. We might as well just throw that in there. Kamu Grugier-Hill did leave practice with an injury. Coach Peterson did say afterwards that he's being evaluated. Lower body. We'll see, in the coming days.
Yeah, It was that last live period. It was Jordan Howard run up the middle. Grugier-Hill went in to make the tackle and stay down. So we'll see what happens with that.
Ben, what about you? Any big takeaways?
No, just harping off your point about tackling, going live to the ground. Now you get the full picture of some of these positions. The running backs, the linebackers, the safeties. A lot of these players hang their hat on the physicality aspect. And how do you really get the full snapshot if you're not seeing the full play? Safeties tackling to the ground, linebackers imposing their will, running backs fighting through contact balance, falling forward. In order to get that full picture, you kind of need to see the full play. So it's really giving us a chance to evaluate these players properly for some of the first times this summer.
All right, so we're going to talk about, let's start first with these one-on-one drills in the beginning of practice. Ben, you were, I believe, watching the red zone receiver DB one-on-ones, but first, CMAC, you and I were watching the backs and tight ends against the linebackers and safeties. Who stood out to you in particular? You talked about that one rep, Miles Sanders down the seam.
That was a good one. There was a strong one that Jordan Howard where he burned TJ Edwards on, and the only thing he didn't make the catch. That was the only part of it.
It was a little bit over the top. Yeah, a little bit out of reach.
Not completely on Howard, but that's the only part about it. But from the route running standpoint, got himself open, did a great job there. Miles Sanders, I watched one rep where he was in pass protection, and I thought he was very willing.
Yep.
I think the footwork is still something that has to be cleaned up. right after the rep, Coach Daly came over and kind of was talking to the entire running back group as a whole. Obviously, that's a huge part in being able to stay on the field is pass protection, especially with Deuce Daly and this Eagles offense. So the biggest thing with Miles Sanders was, is he willing to do it? Yes. It's just some of the technique stuff has to be refined a little bit. That's what I thought.
There were a few. First of all, Dallas Goedert cleaned up from the blocking aspect. He was awesome in the period. I thought Andrew Sendejo had a couple of really good reps in the drill. Jordan Howard had a couple of good blocks in the drill. One play of note, Corey Clement went out on a route, catches the pass in the flat, did a really nice job of sticking his foot in the ground and cutting along the sideline. I thought that was notable, just seeing him come back from that injury, make that cut along the sideline, I thought was notable.
A couple others, Jonathon Cyprian, just signed by the Eagles on Friday. I saw him matched up in one rep against Josh Perkins, the tight end, and Perkins made the catch underneath, but it was a very competitive rep. I thought Cyprian did a good job in coverage. Didn't see a lot outside of that from Cyprian overall in the day, but liked what I saw there. Zac Brown, physical linebacker, and is going to add a punch to his defense. The way he rushed on this one rep, I was like, he could almost be a defensive end, getting the long arm out there and pushing the guy who's going against back into the quarterback. I'm like, he almost has the size where like if we're gonna pitch here,
he's a big boy in person, and sometimes you see him with some of those defensive ends, and he looks the part. You see does. 51 out there, his jersey's pulled up. Sometimes he looks like Stephen Means a little bit.
There you go.
He said that numerous times this summer. That's why I look
We've
right at that.
seen Zac Brown quite a bit, playing against him with the Redskins. The first time I really seen him close up. He's a big linebacker. He's a big boy. He's every bit at 230, 235, whatever he's listed at.
Can I say one guy that stood out to me too in that drill was, and he stood out both as a route runner and as a blocker in pass pro, Alex Ellis, the tight end that they just signed this week. I thought he had a couple really nice reps, in that drill. And you mentioned Jonathon Cyprian. I like the signing a lot. A guy to come in, a veteran presence. He's been around the league, can come in and compete for depth, and and offer. We know he could be a dime safety and offer some versatility from that standpoint.
Yeah, I think it's a no risk move. You're
question.
trying to add depth. It's not anything against Rodney McCloud was doing team drill.
He was doing team drill, yes.
He took the next step today. It's not anything against him or the other safeties. This is a guy who led the league in tackles a couple of seasons ago, has been to the Pro Bowl, was a former second-round pick, I believe, when he first entered the league. So you mentioned what he can bring to defense. There's a defined role for him if the Eagles want to utilize him in that way with that dime linebacker experience where he can allow Malcolm Jenkins to work more in coverage. So it's just another weapon for Jim Schwartz to use, and if he doesn't pan out, he doesn't make the team. It's that simple.
He's had kind of an up and down career, being the 33rd overall pick, just one pick outside being a first round pick. But when he was a rookie with the Jacksonville Jaguars, he had to play with another rookie safety on that back end with Josh Evans from the University of Florida. Very young defense. That kind of year or two before Jacksonville started to really turn the corner and, drafting the Miles Jacks of the world and getting Calais Campbell and Jalen Ramsey. He was kind of that previous regime that had a lot of youth around him. And I think got kind of a bad rap in his first couple of years in the league. I think he's a much better player than he put up on tape his rookie year, second year. And then Jacksonville kind of turned the corner and they went different directions. He went to Tennessee, didn't play last year. So I think he still has some good football ahead of him.
Yeah, and you talk about defensive players that are, new change of scenery. How are they going to react? Hassan Ridgeway got reps with the first team in two of the first team periods. First, he was lined up with Malik Jackson, and I'm thinking, maybe Jernigan is practicing today. And the next team period, he's lined up next to Jernigan. So they were clearly trying to mix him in, and I think they've done that a little bit with Trayvon Hester as well. Some of those other guys. What you'll see, especially this time of camp, with a lot of guys, if there's a roster battle going on, or if there's a position battle going on, is, hey, let's mix this guy in with the first team, and then tomorrow we'll mix in the other guy with the first team and just see how those guys look going up against the ones. We saw that from Ridgeway today.
Yeah, he made a couple plays out there too. So I think that's the thing, is you're looking for someone to stand out. You pretty much figure Fletcher, whenever he comes back, he's going to be obviously cemented in his spot. You've got Jernigan and you've got Malik Jackson. It's just who's going to be that fourth guy in the rotation.
I don't know that any team in the NFL has three the way that the Eagles do.
No.
I don't think so.
It's a pretty dominant group. Yeah,
that's a really good group.
Especially if Jernigan can get back to what he was in 17. That's one of the under the radar storylines for me early in this Eagles season, where if Jernigan can be that guy and bring that edge, that something with the Florida State guys, they bring that nasty to the defense.
You saw a little bit of that today. It was early in the first live session. I want to say it was a delay of game on the offense, or it was a false start on the offense. And Jernigan, I figure most times those guys, they just go their separate ways. Jernigan goes into the backfield, in the offensive backfield, and he's talking trash to all the skill players in the back of behind the offense, waving the finger, giving them the business afterwards. And that's Tim Jernigan. That's one of the things he brings.
Well, I believe, was it the same play? Was it Kevin Wilkins who picked up the ball?
I didn't see this.
And I don't know if it was. I thought that was a one delay of game penalty I saw. And Kevin Wilkins, I believe he's out of Rutgers, a rookie free agent defensive tackle, picks up the ball and moves it back the 5 yards for the offense. So.
He's doing him a favor.
Yeah.
He's been doing a great job actually of carrying the pads and getting the water ice for the rookie or the veteran defensive lineman. So he's used to picking things up and moving along. He's just helping the veteran offensive lineman. Team period. So they go first team period. We see Deshaun Jackson and Carson Wentz hook up for a big play down the right sideline. That was good to see. And then in that drill is when we first saw Rodney Mccloud, his first full team 11-on-11 action of the summer. I thought that was good to see. I mentioned that a little bit earlier. So we saw some of him in base, and then some different things with sub packages as well. Some big nickel, some dime. A lot of the things we've seen from this Eagles defense over the last few years.
Yeah, we saw guys like Blake Countess.
Yep, and he's
got
healthy
some first team
now.
reps.
Sure.
Trey Sullivan, working in there as they were trying to work in some different players there. So a couple different looks there. We saw 21 personnel from the Eagles, which we don't see a ton of.
Two backs,
where Pumphrey was split out wide and then did a little precept motion into the backfield. So it's again, training camp, you're offering different looks, but it's interesting to see which players they put in some of these packages to give the offense or defense a different look.
The DB groups are really interesting because we haven't had the full arsenal defensive backs.
Still don't, yeah.
Mills being out, Darby's kind of up and down, being an injury last year, so he hasn't been in the team periods. Rodney Mccloud in, so we're starting to see some of the bigger pictures. So we're seeing the dime packages and some of those personnel groups they want to use, but haven't had the bodies back there.
So let's see. I'm just going through my notes now in sequential order. So we get to that first live session. We already mentioned the Tim Jernigan deal. We mentioned Donnell Pumphrey, the Jordan Howard run on the goal line. The other play that I had earmarked from the ones was a play-action pass, Carson Wentz hitting J.J. Arcega-Whiteside over the intermediate area of the field. Nice catch by J.J. In traffic. I thought that was one of the other highlights. And continue to see plays from the rookie every day. He seems to continue to show up.
Here's a player who we haven't talked a ton about.
Okay.
Alex Singleton.
Yeah.
He had, going back to that running back, tight end versus linebacker drill, had a couple nice reps, had a nice tackle of Josh Perkins on a short pass during the live tackling session in practice. And when Kamu Grugier-Hill got hurt toward the end, Singleton was the one who actually went in with the first team
Ben
defense.
pointed that out, yep.
Yeah, so the former Canadian Football League linebacker, spent some time talking with him after practice, and I asked him, one of the players who was released yesterday was Joey Alfieri, who we talked actually about on the last podcast, and just asked, what was it like, Alex, seeing a guy in your room, get the call? And he was like, look, you have draft picks at certain positions that they're not going to touch those spots. If you're healthy at linebacker, it becomes a numbers thing. That's where they're going to probably pick from. And he's like, look, I've been there 7-8 times. Been there. It doesn't get any easier. If I get that call, it's going to be another gut punch. He said he felt for Joey, but he said to him, I get another day on the field. Yeah. I get another set of reps, and I'm trying to make the most of this opportunity. So,
for those of you who watched Hard Knocks at any season, this is this is the reality of the league at this point in the year.
It's really just interesting the way opportunities come and go. Whether it's a player being cut overnight, whether a player gets dinged up in practice, whether a starter's just having a veteran day, being off. The opportunities come and go, seemingly day to day, even session to session. So it's just really interesting to see who gets that opportunity and then what they do with it. And he may not have that opportunity to play with the ones tomorrow. It may have been his only chance today. That 49 got the call because Kamu got dinged up and he was the one to go in the lineup. Yeah. So, just really interesting kind of the makeup of some of these back-end roster guys and if they could kind of thrive when their number's called.
7-on-7, you made an interesting note about what you saw from an offensive standpoint going into that drill.
Yeah, offensively, typical Eagles, Doug Peterson, multiple personnel groups. They'll go 11 personnel, 12 personnel, 13, then back to 11, 11 again, then 12, and then coming out of the huddle into quick snaps. And that really puts a lot of pressure on the defense, not only to sub and match the personnel groupings, but to be on the same page and assess where these players are lined up. Like I mentioned a couple days ago, this isn't a Cheesecake Factory menu. It's a kind of a very focused group of concepts, and then you can run it out of different personnel groups, different formations, different packages, on the surface. And that's very tough for defenses to assess, especially when you're getting out of the huddle quickly into a quick snap. You really have to kind of understand your defensive cues and your checks, and you're working with a lot of people around you that maybe you haven't worked with for years and years. And the communication aspect is just a really fun cat and mouse to pay attention to on the practice field. The success and failure of the plays, I'm not so much interested in training camp. It's all the aesthetics around it. It's the communication. Are you in the right spots? Are you talking after the play? Or do you know what to do with your assignments? That's what training camp's all about. The pros and cons, like we were talking, not tackling to the ground. How do you evaluate a linebacker not finishing a play, or a running back not given the opportunity to fight through a tackle? That's really not what training camp's about. It's about knowing what you're doing, being right between the ears first and foremost.
Any big takeaways, I guess, before we our parting shots, before we put a ribbon on this bad boy?
Let's see, 7-on-7, just Greg Ward. Greg Ward
Yeah,
continues.
he's making plays. You're right.
He's making plays, and he's another player I had a chance to talk with after practice, and he said that the last 2 years, if you go back, he had that amazing career at Houston. Was he a finalist for the Heisman Trophy? He was in the discussion.
He was in the discussion.
He was in the discussion. Yeah. So as a quarterback, of course, he comes to the Eagles as a rookie free agent wide receiver, which he played early in his career at Houston, so it wasn't completely foreign to him. But he made the practice squad, was part of the team that won the Super Bowl, and then comes back in 2018 and gets cut, I believe it was the first week of the season after being on the practice squad, and doesn't resurface the entire season. And just, he talked about the highs and the lows and just how mentally difficult the last 2 years, because you start to believe that you're not good enough. And he's like, I'm working every day to show that I do belong, that I deserve a spot on a roster, that I can play at this level. And from a numbers game standpoint, it's going to be very difficult. But the guy just makes plays each and every day. And that's the thing, when he had his first good day of practice, that's what we said. You just got to keep showing up every day to get to the point where it's like, this guy ain't going away.
And let it carry over to preseason games. That's where all 32 teams are going to get a look at.
Of course. And what's funny is, I did mention, we are less than a week out from the first preseason game. How much are you looking forward to that? And he gave the coach speak answer of, I'm focused on getting to meetings right now. I'm not looking.
That's what Ben, that's what Ben, you've been saying, a lot of these guys, it's like they're swimming in so much. When you're a guy that's fighting for that roster spot, you have to be completely on your P's and Q's, like every little thing. So that's a good answer.
Great answer. Great. And you could tell just from talking in his tone, like it's all business. Yeah. It's all business with him.
I would say that it was fun to see Doug Peterson not bashful about the whistle today, with giving his crediting sacks towards his quarterbacks.
Yes,
Shariff Miller got into the backfield. Josh Sweat got into the backfield, and there was one, I'm trying to remember, one of the quarterbacks turned and kind of gave him the palms up, and he was like, "Gotta get rid of the ball."
Yeah, you mentioned Shariff Miller. I thought he flashed more today than any day in practice that I've seen.
I think that's
from
probably
him.
fair. Yeah.
Yeah. So there were a number of plays, tackles for loss in the backfield. A couple times he got to the quarterback, goal line. I think he had a stop on the goal line. I thought, this is the most I've seen. It's the most that he's popped, at least to me, here in training camp.
Parting shot, Ben?
I just come away impressed with Malcolm Jenkins each day. Man, this guy has to cover Zach Ertz down in the red zone. Then he has to match up against Nelson Aguilar. Then he's got to turn and run with Deshaun Jackson.
And Darren Sproles in the middle of the field. Those guys match up all the time.
The different coverage matchups and assignments he has to go through just in the course of practice. Man, he has to wear so many hats. He needs to be a nickelback, a safety, a box linebacker, a back-end player, on top of his leadership and being that kind of second quarterback of the defense. Just very impressive each day, and just kind of taking notes of the different things he has to do against different style of players. Just very impressive versatility.
Interesting you bring up Jenkins, because Pro Football Focus just tweeted the top 10 safeties for the 2019 season.
I hope he was in it.
He wasn't.
Interesting.
So he quote tweeted with the Bart Scott, can't wait. So
it's a good pull. Yeah.
So he's on. Yeah.
Well,
so
an
he's
extra chip or two on these players' shoulders has benefited in the past. So.
One funny thing, when they were doing the goal line drill, the field goal posts were still right at the back of the end zone. Right. So all of a sudden they have equipment guys going to move them. So you see the goalposts starting to lean forward and it, like shaking around. Yeah. And one of the fans standing near me goes, "Well, Cody Parkey would still doink it off of there."
Oh, we were in a meeting. It was upstairs in the afternoon, like during last week when we had the storms, and we're upstairs in the meeting, and I think they were moving the field goal post from one to another. And we didn't know the skies were dark, and you just see the field goal post move, and I like jumped up to look out the window, thought they were going over. Luckily, it was just a couple managers moving the field goal posts. All right, so I think that's going to wrap it up for today's show. Just a couple things from a housekeeping standpoint. Number one, whenever you can, go rate, review the podcast. Let us know how we're doing, what you like, what you don't like. Give us that rating. It really helps the show whenever you can go and just leave that rating, leave that leave that comment. Wherever you listen, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, wherever you listen, they have those comment sections and those ratings. That helps us. It's the number one way to support the show. Then, over the next few days, here's what you can expect. Sunday, the Eagles practice at over at Lincoln Financial Field, so it's open practice, not till 7 p.m. So we're not going to put out a show at 11 o'clock at night on Sunday. We will be back on Monday for Eagles practice. So we've got a show Monday, and then Tuesday. Wednesday, the players are off because of the game on Thursday. This show is not off, though. We will have our first division preview, our first matchup preview with the Washington Redskins. So I'm hammering out the details for that show, but expect that to drop on Wednesday, and then maybe we'll get together for a post-game podcast for Friday after watching. We'll see.
Football. We have to.
We're going to be excited for that. But that's what you can expect this week here in the first preseason action of the 2019 season, which will be a lot of fun. So thanks again for listening to the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast, fueled by Gatorade. For C-Mac and Ben, I'm Fran. We'll see you tomorrow.